Last class, we have seen how there is a lot of change in the technology when it comes to power. We have seen the trends that caused a lot of change in computers with respect to technology, with respect to power and energy, and so is also with respect to cost. And then now, today's class, we'll be seeing a few more topics. Uh, I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Is it visible?
Yes,
Right.
yes, ma'am.
So now with those trends, keeping those trends in mind, we move to the next topic, which is dependability. And if you see in computers, the integrated circuits are one of the most reliable components of a computer, and in, at least that's what people feel. But then when these chips are there, there are a lot of small pins and interconnections that happen between them, and there is very high chance that these delicate chips can get burnt because of voltage fluctuations and all these things. Uh, so in such a scenario, dependability plays a very major role. And when we talk about dependability, how do you ensure that you can rely on the particular circuit or a system? We talk with respect to the service level agreement. We have this. I hope you all have idea about what a service level agreement is. That generally we have it when you take internet connection from these internet service providers. They give you for this many hours, or this is our this is the level of service that we give, how many hours is the uptime, sort of thing. So when architects design the systems, they cope with these challenges of dependability. And when do you depend, or when can you rely on a particular system? When it gives you complete fully functional service. So when I am talking about accomplished service, there is also something known as service interruption. So when we are talking about service level agreement, we talk about two states of service for any system. One is service accomplishment and the other is service interruption. Service accomplishment is that whatever is there in your service level agreement, if they say that this is the speed that we provide you, they'll be assuring that that service is delivered as specified. Say 100 mbps is the speed that they give in your service level agreement. So that is service accomplishment state, where at any given point of time the service is delivered as specified in the SLA, service level agreement. But because of certain circumstances, sometimes there will not be or there will be a disruption in the service. We call it as service interruption, where the delivered service is different from the service level agreement. So when they have promised a 100 mbps speed for our internet, if you are not able to get that speed, then it is a service interruption. We When we are talking about dependability on our system components, we talk about these two system states. One is service accomplishment and service interruption. Service accomplishment is service is delivered as specified in the service level agreement. Whenever there is an interruption from the service which was specified, we call it a service interruption. And uh, the transition between these two states is caused by either a failure or a restoration. In the sense, um, if there is a your system will go from generally your system will be in service accomplishment state, and it will go to service interruption state when there is a failure. And again there will be some repair that happens, and after the repair or a restoration happens, again your system goes from service interruption to service accomplishment. So from state 1 to state 2 if there is a failure, and from state 2 to state 1 if there is a restoration. And to quantify these transitions from state 1 to 2 or 2 to 1 is a measure of the dependability, and we take certain parameters known as Module reliability or module availability are two different parameters we use to quantify these transitions, which are a measure of, they will be taken as a measure of dependability. And when you look at module reliability, it is a measure of the continuous service from a reference point. So generally you take from the start of that particular service, or when you buy that component and start using it. So from that reference point, it is a measure of continuous service accomplishment. And generally we have three parameters that we look here. One is the mean time to failure. Mean time to failure is from that reference point till what time your system is there in the service accomplishment state. And the other way to look at mean time to failure is, it is also called in failure, number of failures in a given time. So the general thing that we take is failure per billion, 10 power 9 billion hours of operation. And MTT of this 1 billion is equal to 1000 failures in time, which is we take by 10 power 9. And after mean time to failure, we have mean time to repair, which is used the measures for service interruption, till how much time your service is interrupted. Again, from your for your component or for your system to go from a repair state to a failure state. And the third thing is mean time between failures, which is some of the above two, because mean time to fail is from a reference point till the service accomplishment. It is a continuous service accomplishment, and once there was a failure, there starts that is your mean time to failure, and from there till restoration happens, it is mean time to repair, and again from there till a failure happens, it is a mean time to failure. The other this is these are the parameters we use for module reliability. And then we have module availability. This is the measure of service accomplishment. So how much time your module or your system component is available. This is with respect to the alteration between two states, from mean time to failure to again the next failure state. So that module availability is ratio of mean time to failure by mean time between failures. Mean time between failures is nothing but sum of mean time to fail by mean time to repair. Then after looking at these reliability options, then we'll look at the other thing, that is, how are you going to measure performance? uh, how do you measure performance? How do you see all this course is about improving the performance of your systems, or that's how we look at how can we improve the performance of a computer. But then how do we say that what is a measure that we see when it comes to performance? How do you measure it? How do you report it and summarize it? So when it comes to measuring the performance, first let us see how do we look at it. See, here is a statement which says the performance of program X, um, the execution time is, I hope we all are aware that execution time and performance are directly proportional or inversely proportional. It's a question.
Inversely proportional.
Inversely. So the more the execution time, the less, isn't it? Or the other way, the less the execution time, we assume the system is performing much better. So when I say a program Y is faster than program X, where here we have Tx and Ty, which represents the execution times of program X and Y. Then a program Y is faster than program X by a factor C, then we represent it, the ratio of the execution times of X and Y will be equal to C. Since they are inversely proportionate, we take the reciprocal of the reciprocal for when it comes to execution time to performance. So Tx is equal to 1 by Px and Ty is equal to 1 by Py, which will finally result to Py by Px. So although this is by a factor of with respect to, so when I am saying my system performs better than some other system, how am I how am I going to do, or what is that standard unit or measure that I look into. So when it comes to execution time can be measured in several ways. We have two here. One is known as elapsed time or wall clock time. Elapsed time is the total time for a given task, which includes the processing, the disk access, OS overhead, everything, waiting time, everything you take into consideration. And this is typically measured in seconds or milliseconds uh, or so. The other parameter with which we measure execution time is known as CPU time. This is the time the processor is computing and it is not waiting or doing something else, waiting for IO. All these things are not there. Only the amount of time the processor spends in computing resources, and this is typically measured in cycles. And universally, this is a better parameter or the most accepted parameter to measure the execution time of a program. And when it comes to measuring this performance, so we have different types or different mechanisms in which we can measure the performance. We have kernels, we have toy problems, we have synthetic benchmarks. All these things to compare our performance or to measure our performance. Kernels are the just small key fragments of the actual programs, or toy problems, or simulated versions of the complete programs, the short versions of the complete programs. And synthetic benchmarks are the original programs, which are a smaller version of the original programs, which simulate the behavior of the real programs. All these things were used once upon a time to measure for the performance of the system, but now everything is discredited or everything is discarded, and people are opting only one thing, that is a then benchmark suite, which is nothing but a collection of real programs. It has a set of real programs, and these programs are spread across various application areas, and says this for this area, in this area, for this integer programs, this is the best performance that we can get. In this area, for floating point programs, this is the best performance that we can get. So it consists of a collection of all these real programs. And when in general, when people measure their performance, they measure it with respect to the benchmark programs. And spec is one benchmark which is quite popular. So the benchmark consists of many real application programs, and they are written in various programming languages. And it is, this benchmark have various types of programs, both for desktop process and server. We have our desktop benchmarks as well as server benchmarks. If you see in desktop benchmarks, again, we have programs with respect to processor intensive programs and graphics intensive programs. Each have its own set of programs saying for these programs, this is the performance that we get. And when it comes to server programs, these desktop benchmarks mainly focus on processor performance, whereas server benchmarks focuses mainly on throughput performance, or how efficient the throughput of the server is. Within that, you have various programs. Some are measured on throughput orientation. There are again file server programs, web server programs. On various, as I said, these desktop benchmarks will have various sets of programs, which are intended for various application areas running various kinds of programs. So we have transaction processing programs, which handles the transactions within databases. So when you want to compare a server which handles number of transactions, you compare the performance with respect to these transaction processing programs. And once, when you compare your results with the benchmark programs, you reproduce your results, you report the performance of your system. And when you are producing your results, you need to ensure that you state everything that is required, because somebody else want to replicate your results. He should have all the information that you have used to produce those results. And you need to specify both the baseline and the optimized results. What are the actual results that you got, and then after taking some efficiency techniques, or after using some optimization techniques, what are the results that you have got, and you represent them in various formats. In addition to that, you also will be specifying what you call the audit and cost information, because most of the manufacturers, they compete both on performance as well as cost. So it is always in addition to the performance results, it will be always good to produce the cost information also in your benchmark report. How do you summarize your results? See, I run, as I said, benchmarks will have various set of programs, and you compare various programs on various applications. And now, when you want to say the result, it is like you get different marks in different subjects. And now, what is your result? You can't say, I got this marks in so and so subject, this many marks in so and so subject. Finally, you'll be giving one number. So, summarizing your result. So, how do you summarize a benchmark performance result? We have different means to represent one single number for that thing. One way is you take out the arithmetic means of all the execution times of the various programs in the suite. You come with some number, but rather than, but there could be a scenario that when you have taken this arithmetic mean, it may not be fair enough, because certain programs can be small, certain programs can be large. So smaller programs relatively take less execution time, bigger programs take large amount of execution time, and you take the arithmetic means, it doesn't make sense, because of that reason. Where the other thing that people generally do is that they add weighing factors to each benchmark and have the weighted arithmetic mean. But in this competitive environment, when different people want to add weights to their respective performance results, I obviously give more weight to my result, right? In a generally in a competitive environment, and no one will be agreeing to give lesser weight to a given program, sort of thing. So again, to avoid this controversy, the other possible solution is to normalize the execution times by referring or by comparing your results to a reference computer. That is, compare your result, or you um, refer to your execution time with respect to a reference computer, and then compare it to the other systems. So this is like this. We call it a spec ratio, where what we do is that when we are comparing um, two computers, say computer A and computer B. So I have spec ratio of computer A followed by spec ratio of computer B. So how do I get computer A spec ratio? Spec ratio of computer A will be, I compare the execution time of program A with respect to some reference computer. So it is execution time of reference computer by execution time of the actual computer program, say A. That is spec ratio of program A. And then I repeat the same for program B. I compare the execution time of program B with respect to some reference computer, and then I compare it to the execution time of compare B. Finally, what do I get? I get execution time of B by execution time of A, and whatever reference that you have taken will no longer be playing any role when you compare these two execution times. So finally, this results in performance of A by performance of B. Other means is also to evaluate geometric means from the above, where you try to calculate the geometric means of all the spec ratios of all the programs that you are taking. Again, when you figure out how to calculate the geometric mean, and you take the compare, you take the ratios of the respective spec ratios, the value that you take with respect to the reference computer will be nullified, and finally the two programs performances will be measured. Then moving on to the next topic. So that's about the benchmarks, how to compare, how to measure your performance, how to tabulate it, and summarize your results into one single number. And the next thing is to look at uh, various what you call techniques to improve the performance of the system. But before going to that, we'll look at a few quantitative principles that we need to keep in mind when we are looking at this computer design. The very first thing is to take advantage of parallelism. Uh, why is parallelism so advantageous? Obviously, rather than doing things sequentially, when you do things at a parallel pace, you'll be able to finish the task in lesser amount of time, because execution time is what we are looking into. But it is not only with respect to execution time. At various levels, take advantage of parallelism. Here are a few things that are cited. One is at system level. Scalability is at system level is, rather than executing your programs using single processor, use multiple processors. Your system performance increases. Rather than using single disk, go for multiple disks. You'll be able to store more amount of data, or you'll be able to retrieve data faster when you have multiple disks, which we'll see in the second chapter. And then when you're executing the instructions, try to achieve parallelism among the instructions by using pipelining. I have a chat message. Is it what we call what is parallel computing is different, because here we are talking about parallelism at different things. Parallel computing, yes, we'll talk about it when we are talking about when we start pipelining and all. But the other thing, the first one that I told, parallelism at system level, is more about increasing the resources of your system, so that system is able to cope more amount of work in less amount of time. And then we have parallelism at detailed design, where when it comes to caches, you use set associative caches, which ma'am will be taking in memory hierarchy chapter, which will improve the performance of your system. So at any given a chance in computer design, if parallelism is possible, either at system level or instruction level, or even in coming to the design level, you try to choose parallelism, which improves your performance. The other thing is, always keep in mind the principle of most important property, that is the principle of locality. What does principle of locality say? Have you read this principle in your COA course? Have you read principle of locality in COA course?
They would have read it in OS also.
Yeah. Okay. So what what does that say? As the principle of locality says, you tend to reuse the data that you have, data and instructions also that you have used very recently. Uh, uh, as an example, program will be spending 90% of its execution time in only 10% of the code, because it will be reusing the same instructions or data that it has used very recently. When it comes to this principle of locality, we categorize it or we look at it in two phases. One is temporal locality, which is with respect to time, and the other is spatial locality, which is with respect to the address space. So temporal locality, the recently accessed items are likely to be accessed in the near future. If you have accessed a data item which is at memory location M1, then there could be a high chance that items close to M1 or data items which are close to M1, M0 or M2 are likely to be accessed very likely to be accessed in the next coming instructions. And then spatial locality is, that is spatial locality, which I have told that when you refer to a data in a particular memory location, items close to that memory location will be accessed very near future. That is what is spatial locality. Temporal localities, items that you have accessed very recently are likely to be accessed in the near future. And then the third quantitative principle that we'll be looking at is focus on the most common case. So when you are determining how to spend the resources, look at those resources which will be very common and try to optimize them or enhance them. Suppose resource allocation, when you are looking at resource allocation or when you're looking at power, look at power distribution. Look at those cases where you are using it for maximum number of times or where it is occurring more number of times and try to improve it. So you decide what the frequent case is. Suppose say in a system you have a instruction fetch and decode unit, and then you have an adder unit and you have a multiplier unit. So multiplier unit in your 2000 lines of code, you are hardly using it or 6 to 7 times. Adder unit, you may be using some 25 to 50, 40 times or even more than that. But instruction and fetch unit, you use it much larger number of times. So when you are trying to make your make an improvement or an enhancement in your entire system, try to improve the instruction and fetch unit, because that is the most common thing that occurs for every instruction and you will be using it very frequently. Any optimization, any enhancement that you provide to the technique will be improving the overall performance of the system, and such improvements can be measured by means of what we say Amdahl's law. Amdahl's law measures the performance gain obtained by improving some portion of a computer. We have the regular techniques like for execution of a program, we have the regular.
Rukma, I think
Yeah.
we'll soon be cut off. The time is running out, I think. He sent. How much time, Bansi?
5 more minutes. 5
Okay,
minutes.
5 more minutes, fine.
I think Amdahl's law and then we are done. So 5 minutes is enough.
Yeah, and also you can do, we can come back to do the CPU performance equation.
I didn't get you, Anupama.
After we finish Amdahl's law, we may be cut off. We can come back to do the CPU performance equation.
Yeah. Okay. So what we do in Amdahl's law is that, what Amdahl's law says is that when you are executing your program, certain part of the program will be, you can gain some performance improvement by using some faster mode of execution. And this faster mode of execution can be applied only for a fraction of the time, not the entire time. Say, for example, your system, your program runs for 20 seconds. So you want to apply a particular technique which improves your program to run faster. One could be overclocking, or other could be pipelining, or you change some cache mechanism so that you can bring data faster. In some faster mode of execution you apply in your program, and that overall improves the performance of your system. But however, whatever faster mode of execution that you are using in your program, that is limited by only some fraction of the time, not the entire mode of the program. So by that we achieve some speed up. So the speed up, we evaluate it by using the ratio of the execution time without enhancement by execution time with enhancement. And obviously, execution time with enhancement will be less compared to execution time without enhancement, and thereby your speed up will be always greater than 1. So your speed up, this Amdahl's law is basically dependent on two major parameters or two major factors. One is fraction enhanced and the other is speed up enhanced. Fraction enhanced is that how much fraction of time can you convert into enhancement mode. That is, so this is an example. Out of the total 60 seconds, 20 seconds of time can be used for enhancement mode. So this fraction enhanced parameter will be always less than 1. And the other parameter or the other factor is speed up enhanced. Speed up enhancement is how much improvement have you gained by using this enhanced execution mode. So earlier my program executes in 5 seconds, now it executes in 2 seconds. That is the speed up that I have achieved. So how much is the speed up that you have achieved is 5 by 2. So my program runs 2.5 times better compared to the original mode, and this speed up enhanced value is always greater than 1. So this is Amdahl's law speed up. How do you calculate the overall speed up with respect to execution times is the old execution time by the new execution time. However, when it comes to new execution time is the amount of time using unenhanced execution mode plus enhanced execution mode. Unenhanced execution mode is 1 minus whatever fraction you have enhanced. If you remove that fraction of time that you have enhanced, the remaining is the unenhanced execution. That plus the amount of time that you have enhanced. How much do I have enhanced? That is the fraction enhanced by speed up enhance. This into the old execution time gives your new execution time. So a ratio of the old execution time by new execution time gives you the overall speed up that you have achieved. We have nice worked out problems from our textbook which will help you to figure out or to see how much performance or how much speed up can be gained by using this enhanced mode that can be applied for a fraction of time. So that is about Amdahl's law. We'll just break up and then come back to the processor performance.